LAB08 information, spring 22. This is a 2-week lab. Because you're working for 2 weeks, it would be a pain if you couldn't come in for the second week and easily restore the patterns. Now, you'll save them into memory, but someone might overwrite it. So I'm going to show you a sheet that is printed out right there. It's on the clipboard. It'll be over there. So aside from using the memories, which you should, you can quickly grab a sheet and jot down your positions here, make any notes that you want. Also notice it has instructions for how to use the programmer, so that's very helpful. So you're working your first week, you create a pattern, you coming back the second week and you don't know how you're going to remember it, use one of the sheets and take the sheet with you. That said, there's one quick thing on here that's not on here that I'll share with you. You need a minimum of 2 pattern sets. A pattern set is something that uses all 4 rows. Notice that there is a mode switch, 4x32, which means 4 independent rows. They can be clocked independently, or if you only come into shift input 1, it will clock all 4 at the same time evenly, just like the 563 that you've already been using. You also have 2x64 and 1x28 mode. So a pattern set is using all 4 rows. In case you're wondering what you can do with this, the answer is all kinds of things. So here's some really quick ideas besides the obvious. The first obvious thing is send a trigger pattern into an envelope generator that's modulating a filter. You can make all kinds of interesting patterns. Another interesting thing you can get a lot of mileage out of is taking the output of one of the rows and using that to shift a voltage sequencer in patterns other than being totally regular. One of the things you'll find real quick, if you do that, if you want the pattern of that voltage sequencer to stay steady, for instance, depending on the rate you're running this at, you might want to say, I'm always going to use 16 triggers per row and then just move their position, but always have 16. That way it would always line up on the downbeat. Hopefully that makes sense. Another thing you could do with one of the rows is send it out into the burst generator, which is up in the top row. Just send it a trigger and it'll go brrr. Feed that into an envelope generator, into a filter. It's called ratcheting. Tangerine Dream did that a lot. Another thing, which is cool, is take an LFO that has a sync input, synchronization input, to make it restart its cycle, and set it really slow. So it really slowly opens up a filter for 4 bars or 8 bars or 16 bars, and then take the trigger output into the sync input of the LFO. And if you just have position 1, every time it'll reset that LFO and then it'll open up for the entire length of that sequence, and then it will consistently reset. Or you can make patterns of resets. Something else you can do with a voltage sequencer, instead of just stepping it in patterns, which is cool, you could do that, or you could take a trigger output and feed it, for instance, into the gate input of one of the stages of a 960, and then it very occasionally cause that thing that's going ding 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 ding. You could make it reset at certain patterns. Another thing you could do is you could take a trigger output into the 401 VCF resonator. Look at it. It's got a trigger input. It's got a switch that says perk for percussion. It's a resonator. It does all kinds of interesting things. Those are just a few things that you can do with this. All of these instructions are correct, but there's one thing that will make your life a lot easier that I just forgot to put on here is if you have a memory in, say, bank 1, memory 1, and you press and you hit 2 and press and hold recall, it will force load 2 in. But if you are in bank 1, memory 1, and it's playing, and you press 2 and then press recall once and don't hold it, the lights will start flashing. It won't load 2 until it gets to the downbeat. Then it will load in on the downbeat. Now, the LEDs do not update instantly, but the electronics do, so the trigger pattern does. It is also exactly the same here with the previous and next jacks. If you've got bank 1, preset 1, and you just ping that next, like with a trigger row, it will flash the lights, and then on the downbeat it will load up. If you hit it with a gate that holds for a certain amount of time, it will force load it just as if you were holding your finger on it. So that's how that works. Hopefully this helps.